Hey, Freak Show, you're going nowhere. I got you for 10 minutes. 10 minutes of playtime. It's the O Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, CW, and today we're unveiling a new type of episode that I'm going to call the Unstable episode. Unstable. We're going over factions and stables in professional wrestling history, their significance, their dissolution, whatever. We're going to talk about some stables. Today, we're going to talk about Evolution. You guys know about Evolution? It is one of Triple H's many factions that he's had over his long and illustrious career. Triple H is, in my opinion, one of the best to ever do it, but he's also someone who took advantage of his position in the company. He surrounded himself with lots and lots of great talent that then put him over big, right? So a lot of his factions were him sort of getting the best of the deal. You can argue that he was the marquee star in the groups and he should benefit from that. But something like Evolution was very much a Triple H really wants to be champ for a long time, and he just kind of wants to not really put over, but again, a lot of this is Vince too, and it could have been Vince making right for punishing Triple H for the Click incident many years before. But all these factions always felt like Triple H was getting the best of the deal. Let's take a couple steps back and let's talk about what Evolution was. Evolution was a sort of reinvention of the Four Horsemen with Ric Flair, Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista back in 2004. And I think 2004 to about 2013, 2014. So about 2003 to about 2014, it was a big faction. It was very long running. It had some of the best music. I still think their entrance music is great. Had a great entrance. The members were, I would say, almost perfectly picked. I believe there were rumors that there were other people who were supposed to be in Evolution outside of Batista. I think Batista was the last to be picked in there. I could be wrong. I didn't do too much research about that. I just remember reading that somewhere. But it was basically Ric Flair was the mentor. He was the long-reigning 16-time champ. He was the pedigree. No pun intended. Triple H was the leader. He was the present. He was the big name for the time. He was the one leading the group, so he was the present of wrestling. And then the future of wrestling, which was Randy Orton and Batista, which is funny to think now, as both Randy Orton and Batista are now probably where Ric Flair would be at that point. The wrestling business moves fast. But yeah, they were the quote unquote young guys who were coming. Batista was not young at the time, but he was young to the company, but he was not a young man. Randy Orton was a young man. I believe he was in his mid-20s, maybe. That was 20 years ago, 2003. This is all 20 years of my goodness. So yeah, they are now in their late 40s and definitely in the Ric Flair spot. But the group was meant to elicit like this sort of generational powerhouse that had the experience and the expertise from Ric Flair, the cachet and fan love for Triple H, and then the potential of Randy Orton and Batista. And they basically ran roughshod. They beat up everybody they took. I mean, they were the stable of the time. And again, they were riding in limos. They were doing the whole Ric Flair shtick. They all adopted, like, they wore suits and they were at parties and they had all the women and they flew the jets and they were doing the Ric Flair thing that he did so well way back in the day. And the faction seemed to exist the same way kind of like the Bloodline exists now, where they just kind of held all the titles and they got all the press and, you know, all that stuff. I believe Randy Orton was IC champ at one point. Orton and Batista were tag champs. At one point, Ric Flair was IC champ, and Triple H was always the heavyweight champ. Famously, they kicked Randy Orton out of the group after Randy Orton beat Chris Benoit, the man who shall not be named, for the heavyweight title. The next night on Raw, they had like a celebration for Randy Orton. Batista hoisted him up on his shoulders. They were all celebrating, and Triple H is like giving him the thumbs up in a very awkwardly long way, just like kind of, yay, thumbs up to you. And then he, you know, switched it, thumbs down. Batista electric chair dropped Randy Orton, and Randy Orton was famously out of the group, instantly went babyface, and battled Triple H for the title. And as I said, all these factions sort of moved Triple H's needle more than anyone else's. Triple H went over. He beat Randy Orton for the title after Orton had it for a couple of months, I think. The faction dissolved, but it dissolved, you know, much later. They had to split up, basically. The gimmick ran its course. It didn't have the legs that something like the Bloodline would have, because that faction is legitimately like family. So they were like, all right, they have to all go do their separate things. People were taking time off, and people were getting injured. Like, I believe Triple H took some time off. Batista got hurt. He was out for like 8 months. It couldn't sustain itself. So they split up, but they did reunite in 2013. All my dates are going to be screwed up. 2013 against the Shield. The Shield versus Evolution, or the Authority, as they call it. Again, Triple H always had a faction to kind of lean on. But Evolution was a mystery. Evolution is a mystery. But it was one of my favorite entrances. I won't even call them one of my favorite stables. I found them to be pretentious. Again, I wasn't a huge Triple H fan at the time, because I did feel as though he used these stables as like crutches. Triple H was fantastic when he was on his own. When he did have his solo runs, he did do really well, which is why I was always kind of irked that they had to kind of pair him with other people. And you can say maybe it was their way of trying to get the other people around him over, but he always ended up with the title. Let me not turn this into a bash Triple H thing. So yeah, Evolution did its thing for quite some time. Now, the impact of Evolution, I feel it wasn't as, you know, long lasting as something like the Four Horsemen. Obviously, that was more of a beloved thing. The Four Horsemen, being dubbed, you know, the Four Horsemen, or even like the Four Horsewomen, which is Charlotte, Becky, Bayley, and Sasha Banks, was a big thing. Like, when I heard that, I was like, they must be a big deal if they're calling them the Four Horsewomen of WWE. And they were. They ushered in a new age of wrestling for the women of the company. And despite how things are going now with, you know, Sasha and everyone else, they still outwork many people. So yeah, they earned the title. I don't know if Evolution earned any sort of notoriety outside of being another one of Triple H's factions, but they did get over Orton and Batista, who are now Hall of Fame wrestlers. Again, they put in the work, but that was a good platform for them to shine, and I appreciate that stable for that. Now, was the stable stable? No, it was very much unstable. They broke up in 2014, had a couple reunions here and there, but ultimately they dissolved. What do you guys think we should talk about next? What stable should we see, if they are stable or unstable, in this new version of the podcast? Let me know. Hit the bell. Subscribe on any and all platforms. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. And don't you ever damn well forget,
I'm your friend, but if I ever see you in the ring, I can beat you. Don't you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah.